Hello, it is the first midweek with Mechelle, and I am excited and completely nervous to be here with you. My hope is that I can share with you a little bit today, and then as we move forward, please feel free to send me questions or to DM me some information that you're interested in, and I will try and answer those things for you. But today I just kind of want to get some groundwork. Feel free to if you are looking for support, I'm willing to help you today, but I just want you to know that I am here for you in the future, that we can work through and have these kind of mini online sessions if that's what works for us, but we'll start today. So I'm so excited to be here. My name is Mechelle Wingle, and I have a soul purpose, and my soul purpose is to move the planet forward, healing myself and others emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I have hundreds of hours of training and education, but it's when I trust my intuitive gifts that I am at my best. So that's what I'm going to try to do today when I am with you, and always. In my one-on-one sessions, I help people find peace and calm in the midst of life's struggles. And my goal here is to do the same with you. So today I wanted to address a question that I get a lot. And it's not really a question, it's more like a discomfort from people about the idea of healing, the word healing, and the fact that I call myself a healer. And I know that that's kind of scary. So I thought I would just start with that. Let's begin with that idea of being a healer or healing. To heal is from the Germanic word, a root word, which actually means to make whole. So it's very different than curing, which we often associate with healing. And I'm not here to cure you, but I desire to make you whole. And I really believe that we have parts of us that are in need of healing and wholeness. So first, we have to discuss, when we discuss healing, we have to actually go into wounds or injuries or inflictions. So we need to start there. And it's interesting that the word wound is both the word for inflicting, so I wound someone, or I have a wound, I am wounded. And so keep that in mind, that paradox in mind, because it's really important. We wound and we are wounded. And that is the truth. That is the truth here as we interact with each other. So when the physical body gets a wound, like a broken bone, a cut, or a bruise, it can be potentially cured. And the physical body can take steps to heal. So it will, just giving a love for my husband, it will move, it will begin, if we have a broken bone, cells move to that area of the body and begin to heal that part of the body. Or if there's some kind of a bacteria, that blood system moves in and it potentially is curing that blood system. So our physical body steps in to heal those wounds. We also have wounds to our mental, emotional, and our spiritual bodies, and these wounds last way beyond the point of infliction. And mental wounds, here's an example. So a mental wound might be gaslighting or shaming or people that play mind games. These affect and change our thoughts about ourselves and the world. This is a wound. And the wounds, sometimes we have racing thoughts. So that's how our body reacts to it, is we'll have racing thoughts, or we'll have confusion. We'll feel shame or doubt. In an emotional wound, this can look like a loss. And many of us have these wounds all the time. Another emotional wound may be manipulation of love. Neglect is actually an emotional wound. It actually does a lot of damage to be neglected. We may feel abandoned or rejected and feel deep grief or anger, or we may lose connection to our emotions totally, and that happens. Spiritual wounds may look like disowning someone. When someone feels disowned, there is a connection that is broken, and that is a spiritual wound. Another wound that happens is that we are often teach or buy into the idea that our relationship to God is fear-based, and that causes a disconnection. That's a spiritual wound that we inflict on ourselves and others. These wounds of spiritual wounds break our connections. That's what spiritual is. Spiritual is all about connection. And pay attention to that, to your connections. That's your spiritual body. So when any of these experiences happen, or these wounds happen, we experience what I will call, and what many call, trauma. Trauma are emotional, mental, spiritual wounds that inflict the body. And the physical body has a reaction, and we will talk about that more in the future. But I think as we actually move in and get connected more to our physical body, we will be able to communicate when these wounds come in. But right now we've done such a good job at numbing and disassociating from our bodies and feeling like our bodies are not worthwhile or that they are somehow sinful. We kind of shut off from them, so we're missing those important cues. But what happens is that wound is there in the body, and where a physical wound, the physiology of the body sends information there, sends help to go and fix that wound. What happens is the physical body actually starts to cut that off, that emotional wound, that spiritual wound, that mental wound. It starts to actually withdraw from it and begins to break away, and that part of the body starts to fill with dis-ease, or with it messes up with that part of the body, and it's very subtle at first. It takes a long time for that physical manifestation maybe to present itself, but the physical body doesn't move toward healing. It kind of begins to separate from that part of the body. And because there's no nerve endings associated with the mental and emotional and spiritual body, the communication isn't clear. And so we will talk plenty about trauma in the future. And I've helped a lot of people release their trauma. It's been really interesting because trauma is a physiological expression of the body. And so we can release it from the body physically. Now, our thoughts about it might still remain, our emotions about it might still remain, but that physiological part of the body can be released. So, and really quick too, we've used the word trauma. Trauma has responses. There are 4 responses that we go into with trauma. And it's important to understand these. They are fight. So if I was getting physically assaulted, and my fight response may look like hitting or fighting back. But if I had an emotional, mental, or spiritual, my response might be anger or even sarcasm or making fun of someone. That's a fight response. We have flight, a flight response. So physically we would flee, we'd get ourselves out of there, we would run. And these responses, by the way, happen in a microsecond. Our brain, and I'm not sure, I'm doing more research on this. I think more parts of our body are included in this, but parts of us decide in an instant what is our best mode of escape, of staying alive. And so it goes really quickly into that space. So if we are flight, then if physically we would leave the scene, and sometimes that happens even with an emotional, mental, or spiritual wound. But many times we check out, or we just are gone. We can't move any forward. We're just done. We just leave. We flee. We busy ourselves. We break connections if we have a spiritual wound and we decide to flee. If we freeze, so again, fight, flight, freeze. Freeze, we become unable to move. And there's been times when you have felt that, when you feel paralyzed physically. We're unable to think or feel, and we just shut down. And there's a final one that's new, and my therapist uses the word appease, and I've heard the word fawn. And this is where we don't fight. We almost allow, and that's the best response that we have at that moment is to get us from here to there. We respond with appease, and that is a valid response. And there's a lot of healing that needs to go into those kind of things with certain wounds, as in a physical attack or even a sexual rape. Sometimes appease is the best plan that our body has decided to do, and we need to heal and understand that that's what has happened, and that was a valid response to the trauma and not a logical decision. Trauma is not a logical thought process that weighs the incomes and outcomes. I mean, it is a split second. It's a reflex. I did a lot of training with reflexes. Trauma response is a reflex. And but it's sometimes with mental, emotional, or spiritual wounds, what's crazy is that appease or fawn may look like service. So many of us get lost. We just get that trauma response and we just go help someone, which is great. But we need to be very careful about understanding the trauma response, and that if maybe there's something there, a wound that is showing up for us. So that's the wounds. So back to healing. Most of the time, these wounds are inflicted during childhood as we are learning our way through the world. And many times these wounds are not on purpose, because people's temperaments and moods can affect our perspectives a lot. So let's say as a child we are wounded with shame, and that situation and reaction or response are tied together. And when anything comes close to that same situation, words, smells, sounds, whatever, we may get a trauma response. So let's look at a response of fight. So road rage is one of the biggest indicators of a wound that was either mental, emotionally, or spiritual. And we need to look at what that did, where did that come from, what took place. And although someone cutting in front of you is really annoying and it really is rude, the response may not be shared by everyone in the same way. And maybe we have reacted, our reaction is inappropriate or not proportionate to the event. And therefore, that is a big indicator that we have a wound somewhere that needs to be looked at. Because something is creating a false sense of fear in our world, and the impact simply gets bigger and bigger until it gets our attention and we seek help or healing. Because no matter what, we are desiring to be whole. That is our purpose. That is our destiny. That is what we are striving for. Whole in mind, body, spirit, soul. We want to be whole. And I have had lots of healing sessions myself, and I've helped people in healing sessions. And although people are uncomfortable with the word healing, I have yet to find a better word, because I feel healing within myself that goes way beyond a cut or a bruise. So I have yet to find a better way. Today, that is my little spiel is on healing. And I hope if you have questions, please message me. You can also email me at mechelle@mechellewingle.com, and I can support you in that way the best that I can. I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm working on a deck of cards, and I'm going to pull this up actually on my... something that I am passionate about is understanding more and getting connected with our emotional body, our mental body, our spiritual body, and our physical body. And so I am creating a deck of cards, and my hope is that I find for myself, when I have a morning routine, it makes my day go 10 times better. But what happens is after a while, I kind of do the same thing every day, and I start to lose motivation, or I just kind of, it's worked so well that I think, oh, I'm good. I'm good. Let's go and be done. And so I'm always coming up with new ways to to have a morning routine. So I'm creating a deck of cards so that for myself, that I can just pull out a card and it gives me some ideas on what I can do to that morning just to kind of center myself. So these cards are going to be focused on emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical aspects of who we are. They will include an essential oil for each of these little teachings that I have on the cards, a crystal, because I'm all for whatever supports you, and then I have a color therapy, so that day you can incorporate that color if that particular card speaks to you. And I'm all about shuffling a deck of cards, pulling one out, and believing that that's where that's what will serve me the best. So today I'm pulling one out for us, and what pulled out today was an emotional, to thrive emotionally. And this is joy. So joy is available at any time, but many times it is hidden in any given moment. If we still ourselves and breathe deep in our belly, we will feel joy. We will feel the joy begin to rise within us. Joy is not tied to a situation or possession, but comes from the connections to the oneness, which is peace. Joy fills you up and supports you. So for today's practice, this is what we're going to do. Focus. I want you just to take a deep breath. I want you to imagine the breath coming in and out. We're going to start with the heart. The heart center is an indicator for us. It is our emotional core. And just imagine that the breath is coming in and out of the heart. And after a couple of breaths, move down to the belly. And imagine that breath coming in and out of that belly, connecting that deep knowing, that gut knowing, with that heart knowing. And then move up to the head. Just imagine those deep breaths coming in and out of the top of the head, which is another knowing center. Our mind, our beautiful intuition. And I want you to focus for a few minutes on the emotion of joy. And just imagine for a minute, if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. Where does that show up physically in the body? Where do you feel joy in the body? And what are the connections to others that joy brings up? Think of those connections in your life where joy presents itself. And let's send love and honor to those people that bring joy. Think about the thought patterns that arise with joy. Maybe these thought patterns aren't positive, but maybe what thoughts pop in your mind when you connect with joy, the emotion of joy? Imagine joy as like a shape, and imagine that it has a color, that you could just interact with this emotion of joy. And imagine that you can surround yourself with that shape, with that color, that you can almost step inside that shape. And that for a few minutes you can absorb the energy of joy. Feel it well up within you. Feel joy being received from others and you giving it to others. So I hope you have a joyful day. One of the funny things I want to do is I love music. Music speaks to me. And music is often a message for me when I need it. So I am going to throw one of my songs in the comments after every one of my lives. And today, this song is John Belliam's Stupid Deep. And my son Oh, I'm going to cry a little bit. My son is serving in the Air Force. And it's been quite the time having him go into the Air Force during COVID. We dropped him off in January. So it's just been this whole year. He's been in the middle of it, doing all his training and everything in the middle of COVID. And he even actually got COVID and had to recover from it. And we were able to drive across the country with him to drop him off in DC. And he shared this song with me, and I'm so grateful for this song, that this song spoke to him. That what if all I've ever wanted to be, what if the best that I can be is just me? What if everything else doesn't matter? So I'm going to put that in the comments, and I will see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. And love you. Can't wait to be with you again. Ah.